Chapter 1. The Reformation of Enlightenment. The Taj Mahal is one of the most easily recognized of the historical buildings on Earth that are left intact after the great trek into space. It was built for a favorite wife as a tomb. This morning, 3 people are going on an expedition into the Himalaya mountains. They wait before a hole in the ground, about 1 kilometer from the main building, that makes up the many buildings and the gardens that make up the Taj Mahal, waiting for their equipment and transport to rise up from the underground research facility that is their temporary home. 2 of them yawn, being young, that they appear not to truly appreciate all the excitement the professor has as he stands next to them cleaning his glasses. The professor's original wait was to be another 10 years, but was pushed up. One of the assistants is in the military, and another assistant is connected to a corporation that has many top-secret central government contracts in the military. As Professor Chandler and his 2 young assistants wait for the underground elevator to bring up their helicopter and equipment, they look back at their temporary home until they go back to the space colonies to present their findings. The elevator makes a slight grinding sound. The assistants watch as the helicopter stops at ground level. Both of you should be honored that we lived in one of the most famous buildings in the world and in history, the Taj Mahal. The professor says as the assistants load the helicopter, he notices they didn't hear the emotion in his words. He sees they are here for research credits, or for adventures in nature, or for being one of the few allowed on the surface of the earth. In the morning twilight, the moon seems so close, and the few bright stars left are so vivid. The Taj's artificial lighting is slowly dimmed by the computer that controls most functions of the Taj. The surrounding forest around the complex of the Taj makes its waking noises, and some of the noise is of some of the wildlife going to sleep. A zone surrounding historical buildings and research bases is maintained at a 100-meter perimeter around the outermost boundary of the complex. The Taj is approximately 109 acres of land. It takes a full dozen robots to maintain this site, keeping animals out, overgrowth, cleaning, and maintaining and restoring the site. Not all historical sites are man-made. Some are natural formations, and these have no research base. Although there is a grid of unmanned ground monitoring stations approximately every 1,000 square kilometers around almost all the planets in the solar system, the ones that the instruments can survive for more than a few years. Paulina Stevens, one of the assistants, tells the professor that they must leave immediately to avoid a storm that came out of the Indian Ocean. After reading the rest of the information the computer received from the traffic directing computer system, she sits in the pilot's seat. As Paulina starts the checklist, initializing the fuel cell reaction, the sun rises behind the Taj Mahal. At that moment, the assistant sees what the professor meant. Paulina starts the rotation of the blades of the helicopter. Paulina lifts off with a jerking motion, signaling that is very familiar with flying helicopters. She makes a sharp pass around the building to see the sunlight on it. The professor and the other assistant enjoyed the small indulgence. The sunrise is a vermilion due to ash from a volcanic eruption in Indonesia 2 months ago. It gives the building an almost evil look. The computer network has been abuzz for months because of the eruption, mainly its after effects, monitoring, Stations are queried for their reports almost every second from all the affected ones. That would be about 1,000 stations queried by at least 4 million scientists, citizens, news groups, and even elementary students. The long journey to their assigned research area is very interesting, seeing all the wonderful greenery from above. The professor uses the helicopter's surveillance cameras to film animal reactions to the sudden intrusion of mankind, however short, a standing project for all persons on Earth. Paulina reports to the others that she can see their objective, the Himalayan mountain range in the approaching horizon. The mountain range gets more menacing every second. She lands the helicopter 20 kilometers from the nearest mountain, so as not to disturb the animals who live in the mountain range. It is prohibited for one to fly into the mountain range. This is to protect the animals who live there. They pull their snowmobiles from the cargo compartment of the helicopter. Each starts the fuel cells and gets the onboard computer relay system started. While Paulina goes through the shutdown checklist, the other member of the team, Jonathan Tupper, is offloading the supplies, arranging them on the respective snowmobiles. While the professor looks at a map to study their route through the mountain passes, Paulina and the other assistant are putting a net over the chopper to protect it against animals. All three put on their heavy coats and other winter clothing. Their helmets are computerized to show speed, temperature, compass heading, and many other options. Jonathan's helmet is the one with the camera to visually document their expedition. Their 3-day journey was harsh, strong wind, pass-blocked heavy snow, driving 14 hours a day and finding a safe place to camp for the night was the plan, but sometimes it never happened. Got lost only once at least. It takes real dedication not to spend a day enjoying a gorgeous vista or 2 or 20 along the way, spotting more than a handful of animals and avoiding them as best they can. The professor stops the others only 1 kilometer from the point where they are to meet their guides to the digs. After zooming in with the camera, Jonathan confirms the guides are at the rendezvous point, waiting for them. The guides are native of the Himalaya and are allowed to live in the mountains. They do important research. Indigenous people are allowed to live and work their ancient land as long as it is pre-industrial methods and very little or no farmland. Nomadic, hunter-gatherers are preferred to farming communities. Only 30 tribes have been able to live under these conditions, with an average of 205 people in each tribe, the largest currently being 621. At times they are required to do the bidding of the council. The guides tell them that the newest site is about 4 days away to the northwest. A total of 6 sites with around 4 digs in each site. 3 very interesting digs at one site. On their way to the newest site, they stop for a moment or two to look at the progress of the digs. A total of 10 members of the tribe have been taking part in the digs. The professor can only remember half their names. When they reach the newest archaeological site, the digs are almost 200 meters apart and approximately 125 years apart, and 3 completely different civilizations. While the assistants go to examine the digs, the professor and the main guide go to a large chest to examine the artifacts the guides have already dug up. After an hour of light inspection of all the artifacts, the professor puts 2 of them in his jacket, in its many pockets, to examine them closer later. Jonathan signals the professor over to one of the digs to examine an artifact. Jonathan shows the professor that the writing on it is Sioux and asks him how it could have gotten here and why it's even here. The professor is amazed as much as Jonathan as to how an artifact from the Sioux culture found its way to this particular mountain range. The professor takes out the two artifacts from his pocket, handing them to Jonathan to examine. Professor Chandler asks Paulina and the two guides over. The professor asks Gola, the main guide, where they got the two artifacts, while Jonathan showed them to Paulina. In the other two digs, the Egyptian one was found in the dig 27 to the west, and the Inca one was found in the dig 23 to the south of this one. Gola points to the digs. Why is one of the artifacts written in ancient Egyptian and the other in Inca? And that can't be Sioux, can it? Paulina asks the professor in a perplexed way. The professor then notices that one of the artifacts, the one with Sioux writing, is made of platinum. The professor then wipes the other artifacts. The one with Egyptian writing is made of ivory. The other one, with Inca, is made of gold. Incans making things out of gold. Fine, but the Sioux people making things out of platinum. Then there's the ivory. It is almost perfectly preserved, as it was only made a few years ago. He makes a mental note to have the artifacts dated. Seth, the only other guide, while studying the three artifacts, noticed that they looked like a puzzle, and so she put them together. Seth shows the artifacts to the professor as she puts them together. Professor Chandler hugs her and yells for the others to see what Seth has discovered. Professor Chandler immediately asked everyone to look for the missing artifact to the puzzle. The search for the fourth artifact to the puzzle is into its third day. In all three main digs and three other newly begun digs. During breakfast, on the fourth morning, Paulina reports to the professor concerning a soft rumbling sound during the night. It was probably a small pack of animals, the professor says, when Gola interrupts. No animal made that sound. It was an avalanche in the distance, to the north of us. Gola says, knowing full well that it is true. Being part geologist and archaeologist, Professor Chandler gets excited about the thought that the avalanche might have uncovered some artifacts or some evidence of tectonic activity. He has Seth to help him to find where the avalanche was in case it uncovered anything. The two say goodbye as they set off to find where the avalanche came from and leave the others to possibly find the rest of the puzzle. Seth tells the professor that she's going to climb up the side of the mountain they're camping next to see if she can see where the avalanche was. So the professor gives her his binoculars. She climbs up so fast you could say she almost ran up it. Seth started looking around. When she got around 75 meters up, a minute later she saw the avalanche and took out the binoculars to see in what direction it was and how far it was. Seth lets herself fall into a nearby snowdrift. She comes out through the bottom, wiping the snow off herself. It's at the bottom of Mount Kamet, only 5 kilometers away. Seth says to the professor in an excited speech. After Seth starts her snowmobile, she tells the professor to follow her and that she knows right where it is. Then she speeds away, leaving him behind. The professor had only Seth's snowmobile tracks to follow her. Seth got to the site 2 minutes before Professor Chandler. Seth saw carvings in the mountain itself, the last piece to the puzzle carved just above a narrow ledge a few feet above the snow level. It was carved into the mountain itself, The carving looked as if someone just did it, with bites of rock still on the ledge. Seth ran to the professor with the news of the last puzzle piece and some writing off to the side. He was stunned and ran to see for himself. Of course it was there. Professor Chandler calculated that the carvings hadn't been uncovered for at least 2,000 years. The puzzle piece was written in Hindu. The rest of the carvings are written in an advanced form of cuneiform. The professor radioed for the others to come, to bring the computer to translate the cuneiform, and to bring the puzzle pieces. Paulina takes a picture of the carvings in cuneiform, while Jonathan programmed the computer to translate cuneiform. When Seth put the puzzle together onto the mountain piece, they seemed to lock together. The puzzle pieces could not be removed without damaging the artifacts. The computer, after minutes of work, prints out this. A great civilization, not of this land, came to warn us of a conquering people from a faraway land. These people destroy anything in their path of conquering lands. A great civilization chose the people of this land to be the last stand for the stars, because they found that we are the best at adapting, surviving, and winning a war against these people. The great civilization left weapons hidden throughout this land to destroy the invading people. But be warned, there are tests to be passed. The tests will be given on the 11th day of the 3rd month in the year of 2156. That's today. Amazing, the professor says, as he looks at his watch, completely overtaken by the shock of it. I'm going to have to call my commanding officer for their permission to investigate possible evidence of alien life. Paulina says, going into her role as military observer in this district, but Professor Chandler is still in charge of the investigation until a higher authority says otherwise. Paulina transmits the needed data with the computer to the military division assigned to alien investigations at the Department of Interstellar Defense. After Paulina's talk with the commanding officer of that division, she informs the others that she is temporarily assigned to that division of the military. Paulina tells the others that the investigation team will be here in 6 days. Until then, they are to investigate because of the date the puzzle states, and that Professor Chandler is still in charge. 10 minutes after Seth put the puzzle together, steps began to come out of the mountainside and finally led to a cave over half a kilometer up. Professor Chandler leads the way up the steps. Seth is the last in line. When they are about halfway up, Seth looks back to see down the steps, but when she does, they are all gone except 2 steps below the one she's on. Seth tells the others that the steps behind her have disappeared. Light snow begins to fall with gusts of wind every so often. Maybe we have only one try at getting the test right, Jonathan says to everyone, getting concerned and sounding unsure of the whole event. Jonathan, I think you may be right, the professor says to the others as he pulls his hood on after the others do. Except the guides who are used to the weather. They start back up the steps. When they enter the cave, a soft, bluish-green light comes from all around. There's a plaque made of marble just inside the entrance, about 5 feet on the right side, written in English with letters in gold, with the same warning as they saw at the bottom of the steps. Gola shows the others another plaque done the same way on the left side, but saying this instead. There's a test for each person, with the first test going to the first to enter this cave, and so on, with the last test going to the last to enter this cave. There's an old kingdom that awaits you after the 5th. 5 were chosen, and then they came not knowing of the choosing. An old saying in my tribe that always referred to travelers and wanderers. Gola says, while holding his medicine pouch around his neck. They all notice that as they walk into the cave, the walls gradually get smoother as they examine the cave. Professor Chandler points to the end of the cave where there is a smooth wall with 2 words, an outline of a hand below the words, all done in gold. The professor puts his hand in the outline below the words, Test 1. The wall slowly goes into the ceiling, revealing a well-lighted room 5 feet square. Everything is made of an alien material, looks like rock or metal. Paulina says, as she examines the wall next to her. The first may enter, a voice says from all around them. See you in a bit, I hope, the professor says in a shaky voice, with concern as he enters the room beyond the wall. After the professor crosses the niche in the floor, where the wall used to be, the wall slams shut, causing a gust of wind. Professor Chandler slowly leans against the recently closed entrance, awaiting the test. A chair comes out from the floor. The professor sits in it, then a table comes up all around him, with 3 identical cups and a yellowish die. The cup in the middle covers the die. The cups move side to side, forwards and backwards, in random order. While the cups moved in almost all directions, the professor remembers playing this game, almost never winning. The cups stop moving for a second, then make a row in front of the professor. Make the choice. With the voice's last words in his mind, Professor Chandler thinks for a moment. Then with his arm, he knocks over all 3 cups with confidence. He says good job to himself, because the die was not under any of the cups. Correct. The chair and table go into the floor once more. A few seconds after he stands up, he becomes weightless, slowly turning in every direction. Which way is up? Up is a state of mind, he says, after thinking for a moment. Correct. You have one more question. If it was 0 degrees Kelvin, what would Fahrenheit and Celsius tables read? The answer in 1 minute from now. The voice asks after the gravity is restored. A chair comes up from the floor and the professor sits and thinks. A buzzer sounds. What is your answer? 273.15 degrees Celsius and negative 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. The chair falls out from under him as it goes into the floor. 4 chairs come out of the floor in all 4 corners of the room. The wall where he came from opens to reveal the others waiting for his return. The others ask him what the test was like. He tells them that the questions are not done politely, but to the point, and they haven't given up any extra information about themselves. The next door has the words, Test 2, and the outline of a hand just like the first door. Paulina gives the camera to Jonathan, the camera that has documented everything they have done. Paulina asks Professor Chandler if he wouldn't mind stating what happened during the test to the camera. Paulina puts her hand on the outline of the hand on the door. The door opens slowly, just like the first door. The second may enter. The others sit in the 4 chairs, just before the first door slams shut, sealing them from the outside cold. Paulina throws her winter jacket to Gola and walks into the test room after feeling the room fill with warm, fresh air. A second after the door slams shut, something like a motorcycle comes up from the floor. Paulina is wondering what it's for. Get on. She gets on, not knowing what the test is about. The image of her own driveway at home, at her assigned colony, appears all around her. Get to your station. As fast as possible, run all lights and posted speed limits. When you're ready. Paulina notices that the controls are only a little different than her own cycle at home. Paulina speeds down the streets, in and out of lanes, missing cars and trucks by centimeters, and running lights at top speed, racing at top speed around corners. Just when she stops at her station, the image around her disappears. Well done! Paulina gets off the machine. Then it goes into the floor, a chair and table come up in its place. Paulina sits, then a puzzle appears, and a set of rules to go with the puzzle off to the side. The puzzle has 7 pieces, with the main piece having 3 small poles. On one of the poles is where 6 discs, like pieces that go from smallest to largest, like a pyramid. The object of the game is to move the pyramid to one of the other poles, piece by piece, one at a time, without putting a larger piece on top of a smaller piece, as quickly as possible. Towers of Hanoi. When you're ready. Paulina examines the puzzle closely, then starts moving the pieces. Paulina finishes the puzzle in a little over 3 minutes. Well done! Now it's time for a riddle. The table goes into the floor. A footstool comes up in its place, so Paulina puts her feet on the footstool. Now the riddle. What has 1 voice, yet becomes 4-footed, then 2-footed, and then 3-footed? Man, Paulina says, after thinking long and hard, then remembers that it is a famous riddle put by an oracle in an epic. The footstool goes down into the floor. Paulina stands up just before the chair goes into the floor as well. The door opens, revealing the others. Then 4 more chairs come up in the next room. As they go to sit in the next room, Jonathan gives his jacket and the camera to the professor and waits for the door to close behind them. Jonathan steps in front of the words Test 3, puts his hand in the outline of the hand. The third may enter. Jonathan walks in, the door slams shut. He sits in an awaiting chair. How long does it take sunlight to reach Earth? In order to solve this problem, Jonathan has to know how fast light goes and the average distance the Earth is from the sun. 8 minutes and 20.43 seconds. Correct. Good thing Jonathan is studying to be a pilot on a space cruiser, or he wouldn't have been able to answer the question, what has the body of a lion, the head and wings of an eagle? Jonathan wonders what on earth it could be. Then he remembers mythical creatures that could fly. A griffin? Correct. A table rises from the floor with a long-range sniper rifle on it. Then the image of a rifle range appears all around him. Jonathan stands to look over the 4-foot-high table. Then the chair goes into the floor. Shoot the target dead center 5 times in a row. Where's the target? 4.75 kilometers away. That's an impossible shoot. For anyone, even a sniper of the Secret Service, much less me. If one makes the correct adjustments to the scope, anyone can shoot the target. Jonathan fixes the sights on the scope for the distance required as best he can. He looks through the scope to see the target as if it was 5 feet away. Jonathan takes careful aim and fires. Bullseye! Jonathan, amazed at the feat he just performed 4 more times, while taking careful aim each time. 5 bullseyes in a row. Jonathan steps away, while the table goes into the floor. 4 chairs come up from the floor just like the others. The door opens to the others. They walk in. Gola step up to the door, saying 4th test, and places his hand on the outline of the hand. The 4th may enter. Gola walks in. The door slams shut behind him. A table with a small green and blue marble on it comes up from the floor. With a chair, Gola sits. Levitate the marble. Gola wonders how it knows he has mind powers, but he has never tried to use it to pick up an object. Gola focuses on the green marble. After a second, the marble turns to dust. Gola takes a moment to relax. Gola concentrates on the blue marble. At first it rolls, then it levitates in one place, then it flies off, hits the wall at unbelievable speed, getting logged in the wall. Very good. What is a panther with wings called? Gola thinks of mythical legends, like the ones of the Himalaya and the flying panthers. Pan-raven. Correct. How much does one of the blocks from the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh? 2,300 kilograms. Gola snaps the answer out. Gola is a history duff, especially with buildings, him being an architect. The table and chair go back into the floor, replaced by the 4 chairs in the corners. The door opens, letting the others in. Seth looks at the door that reads 5th test with the outline of the hand. Seth puts her hand on the outline of the hand. The door opens slowly like the others. The 5th may enter. Seth walks in, sits in an awaiting chair. The door then slams shut. What do you call a bird of fire? A phoenix. A table comes up from the floor with a compound bow and 4 arrows along with it. Split the arrows on the target. The image of an archery appears all around, one that looks like it's right out of medieval times, with the target 55 meters away. Seth stands to take the bow in hand, the chair going into the floor. Seth takes aim and shoots all 4 arrows while taking careful aim each time. Seth has won many tournaments with such skill. Well done! How many bones do you have? 203 bones. I lost my left pinky finger during a dangerous climb when I was 9. Correct. Seth steps back, watches the chair and table go back into the floor, and a long bench replaces them. The door opens, letting the others in. Paulina tells the others that as soon as Seth finishes her interview concerning the test, she'll take all the camera's information and will transmit it to the alien investigations team en route, who will advise them on further orders or progress of their own investigation. The door to the outside opens when touched. 2 doors are like an airlock so as not to let the cold air in.